profile. We are really thankful for our hosts who were very generous to let us hold our event here. Today we're gonna watch the 24 hours of reality, and I have seen this this show, or however you want to call it, this television event for quite some years now, and I was introduced to this by my teacher, who got me to be a climate reality leader, Mark Newfold, who lives in Vancouver Island. So I'm very happy to now be standing in front of everyone and welcoming you and being your MC tonight. My name is Fernando. I'm together with Erzsi and Laure, one of the co-captains of the hub, and I'm very, very excited to introduce an enormous watch party. That is shaking. That is fun. I know, right? Okay, perfect, beautiful. Thank you. This is too fancy for me. Please consider I grew up in Mexico City, so all of this fancy technology is very first world. And so that's me in the top. So I am the moderator, the MC, and I'm a climate reality leader, a climate reality mentor, the founder and co-chair of the Victoria Community Climate Hub, and then after moving here, I became one of the co-chairs for the Community Climate Hub here in Vancouver. And then we're gonna have a multitude of speakers that I will introduce as they come. Hopefully you can read some of their profiles. We're gonna have Erzsi, we're gonna have Catherine, we're gonna have Jeffrey, we're gonna have Emily, David, Laure, and then we're gonna have a Q&A in the 24 hours of reality. Now, because we're in a short time schedule, we're gonna have all of the questions that you may have. If you can take your smartphones that I know everyone has, and if you can just plug in that website. And so if you have any questions, you put them in there. If you don't have any questions, you can vote for your favorite questions so we can answer them at the end, and we can bring the respective speakers that the question is addressed to so they can answer it. And because we need to finish on time so we can watch it 24 hours of reality. And with that being said, again, I'm very grateful for the profile, and I recognize we're on unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, but we will be introduced more on that topic and on the land and place by Erzsi. So I'm super duper excited to introduce Erzsi. She's Mexican as well. This last name is clearly not Mexican because I cannot pronounce it. But I am so proud to be co-leading with Erzsi and Laure at this hub. She is fantastic. We're 2/3 Mexican leadership, so it's very fun to have tacos and spicy people and very interesting fun. I like it. So I'm so proud to introduce my friend and co-captain Erzsi. So please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Fernando. All right. So, yes, my name is Erzsi. I am Executive Director and co-founder of GreenSeeds Music Society. We do environmentally themed music for youth, educational material for the public, youth. We're currently helping with an educational piece for the film industry on how film sets should be zero waste. So that's one of our projects that we just got funding for through Van City. We're excited. And I also work for a company called Sage Software, not the smelling stuff, software. What I do for them is blogging. I help manage a community website for partners and clients so they can help each other out, answer questions, whatever they need. And one of the things I want to do as part of that is create a blog series around the topic of how businesses should account for natural capital assets. So incorporating natural assets into their financial statements and, building that up so that in our economy we're doing that. And yes, I'm a climate reality project leader trained by Al Gore in Seattle in 2017. And I'm also a longtime volunteer with the David Suzuki Foundation, and I help out with the Blue Dot movement. All right, so I'm gonna take you on a little journey. So here's a view of house sound from the Lower Mainland, and this is from Gambier Island. Across from the water, you can see, well, that's where the Lower Mainland would be. Vancouver's across the distance. So, welcome to tonight's 24 Hours of Reality Watch Party event held on the unceded, unrelinquished ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Coast Salish peoples. I just want to share a little paragraph from a book called Whale in the Door by author Pauline LaBelle. She quotes John Ralston's soul in saying that people around the world are watching Canada with increasing suspicion. Our leaders, governmental, private sector, and even much of the academic class continue to talk as though we're serious environmental players, but they have more energy put into their relationship with technology, a personal attachment to the idea of progress, than into their relationship with place. The Indigenous relationship is centered on place, and it takes a holistic approach. So this would suggest that the environmental movement needs to be reimagined, that our relationship to the land must be central if we are to be successful in providing future generations with a healthy ecosystem. Michelle Molnar is an ecological economist and policy analyst with the David Suzuki Foundation, and she also shares that how sound acts like the lungs and circulatory system for the entire Lower Mainland region, maintaining air quality, stabilizing climate, and protecting communities from natural disasters. You can see in this photo that Howe Sound is made up of the areas of Whistler, over in that area, Squamish, Gambier Island here in the middle, Bowen Island, Anvil, and parts of the Sunshine Coast and Horseshoe Bay. The Indigenous worldview, now supported by contemporary science, understands that relationship is everything, that we are part of one independent Earth community. I'm not myself without everything and everyone else. So let me ask you all, is there any Indigenous representation tonight? No? All right, I would like to take this opportunity with you, in the absence of any Indigenous representation, to acknowledge that there is an urgent need to reimagine the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Howe Sound, if we are to find ways to belong to this time and place together. I'll now segue into a shortened version of Al Gore's Truth in 10 presentation, which is much shorter than the 3-hour version. So we'll quickly review some basic science and world events, and then look at actions to take in Canada. So this is the first picture of the Earth fully illuminated that any of us ever saw. It was taken on one of the last Apollo missions, I think mission 17, and it changed the way that humanity thought about our common home. It reminds us that we're all connected and that our actions have an impact on our planet. There are only 3 questions remaining about the climate crisis. Must we change, can we change, and will we change? First of all, must we change? The scientific community all around the world has been telling us for a long time that yes, we must change, and now Mother Nature is telling us. The sky is not a vast and limitless expanse the way it appears to us as we stand on the ground and look up. In reality, there's just a thin shell of atmosphere surrounding the planet. We are currently dumping 110 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the atmosphere every 24 hours. And here's the basic science of global warming that's been understood since the 1800s. Energy from the sun comes to the Earth in the form of light. That energy is absorbed by the Earth and warms it. Then some of that is re-radiated from the Earth in the form of heat. And some of that outgoing heat is trapped by the atmosphere, which is a good thing because it's kept our planet at a stable temperature. Now, however, we've been thickening the atmosphere by filling it with heat-trapping pollution. So more heat energy is trapped, and it's warming our planet at an unprecedented rate. So there are many sources of man-made global warming pollution: agricultural practices, forest burning, transportation, and many other factors. But the main source and cause of rising global temperatures we are seeing today is the burning of fossil fuels. So fossil fuels still provide more than 80% of the world's energy. Their use and emissions has gone up dramatically since World War II. Notice that in the last few years, though, there has been a leveling off as the world adopts more and more clean energy solutions. As a result of this pollution being trapped in the atmosphere, global temperatures have risen dramatically. 17 of the hottest 18 years ever measured with instruments have occurred since 2001, and the hottest year of all was 2016, although this slide might be wrong, it might be 2017 and 2018 now. So heat itself is a problem in many parts of the world and many parts of this country. Heat affects not only people, but animals, crops, and our weather. On a global basis, more than 90% of all this extra heat energy trapped by our atmosphere is going into the oceans. This heat makes ocean-based storms like hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones stronger and more destructive. In August 2015, 3 Category 4 hurricanes occurred simultaneously in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, the first time that this has ever happened in this ocean basin. So the extra heat also disrupts the water cycle. The amount of water vapor that evaporates from the oceans increases as the oceans warm. This water vapor is carried over the land and often falls in much larger precipitation events. When land can't absorb all this water that falls in these larger storms and downpours, we see floods and mudslides. So extreme precipitation events have produced more rain and become more common since 1950s in many regions of this world, including much of the US. Extreme precipitation events lead to record flooding, which has been occurring all over the world. Sometimes people wonder how global warming can be blamed for causing more precipitation and flooding, and at the same time more drought. The extra heat that's being trapped actually leads to both, and as the climate changes, precipitation patterns also change, leaving some places with less rainfall than before. Changing precipitation patterns can lead to drought and water shortages. This is southern Brazil, for example, which suffered a devastating drought in 2015 and 16. And this is one of the new slides. So in 2006, the 2010 drought turned 60% of Syria's fertile land into deserts. I think here's the second part. And drove 1.5 million people into Syria's already crowded cities. So in the future, the climate in large parts of the Middle East and North Africa could render some regions uninhabitable, which will surely contribute to the pressure to migrate. So hotter years typically have more fires. Higher temperatures also have a direct effect on the incidence and severity of wildfires. Here we see that the number of large fires corresponds closely to years with higher average spring and summer temperatures. Today, the fire season in the western US is more than 100 days longer than it was in the 1970s. So in 2016, this fire in the heart of Canadian tar sands region destroyed large parts of the city of Fort McMurray, Alberta, and forced the evacuation of over 100,000 people. The insurance industry has measured also these precise statistics of flood, mudslides, storm, extreme temperature, drought, fire events, which you can see on this graph that are occurring in an increasing manner for 2015-2017. So here's a picture of a glacier in southwest Greenland, which had almost completely melted by 2013 due to rising temperatures. The flooding in Miami, which occurred on a sunny day with no rain. High tides now regularly flood the streets of Miami, as well as several other coastal cities around the world. Miami is the #1 city at risk in terms of assets at risk, along with Zhengzhou, China, New York, and others. Looking at cities at rising population, we see that many huge cities in developing countries are very much in danger. If parts of these cities become uninhabitable, where will people who live there go? The Department of Defense in the US has long warned about the refugee crisis connected to the climate crisis, as well as pandemic diseases, water shortages, and food shortages. Heat stress is now beginning to decrease crop yields from rice and corn and soybeans. Exposure to higher levels of carbon dioxide also decreases nutrient content of many staple crops such as rice, wheat, and soy. And here we have the global food distribution system. North America, South America, Australia are endemically in surplus versus Russia, Ukraine, Central America, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East and Asia are almost always in a food deficit. So there's a huge flow of movement from the Americas and Australia, and in good years from Russia to the rest of the world. But these are the ways that the climate crisis affects, or these are the ways that the climate crisis affects the food system. We'll take a look at a few of them. Infectious diseases, heat stress, air pollution, and waterborne diseases are all influenced by changing climate and not in our favor. So warmer temperatures have an impact on the spread of tropical diseases. Modern transportation and air travel play a part, but the potential range for many diseases expands as regions further and further poleward get warmer. This means that there are more and more places where a disease like Zika can take root. Here's a mosquito that causes Zika. And for us, the Lone Star tick, which causes an allergy to meat and dairy. Here's some new statistics on, so for Canada, the Canadian Medical Association issued this prediction of where the ticks are going, and they gave a prescription. We have to get doctors to lobby the Parliament to do something about global warming. So we are now at risk of losing 50% of all land-based species in this century. But this, and also oyster farms on the US and Canada east and west coast have been hurt by ocean acidification, threatening thousands of jobs. All of these threats, including many that we haven't covered here, and the fact that the World Economic Forum says that climate change is the #1 threat to the global economy, help to answer the question, must we change? So, must we change? Can we change? We do have some solutions available to us. So what actions can you take as someone in Canada? What can you do to help tackle the climate change crisis? 85% of Canadians agree that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms should include the right to a healthy environment. Environmental rights and Blue Dot are one of the ways. You might have heard of Blue Dot. Have you all heard of Blue Dot? Is there anybody in this room who doesn't know about it? So it's a movement based on the simple yet powerful idea that everyone in Canada deserves the right to breathe fresh air, drink clean water, and eat safe food. I've got a little 2-minute video for you that explains it.
You probably don't question whether you have the right to a healthy environment, to breathe clean air, drink clean water, to have productive soil that grows the food you eat. But you'll be surprised to know this is not actually your legal right, not in Canada. So what does this mean to you? Think about where you live. Now, imagine for a moment that the community you call home is surrounded by chemical plants and oil refineries. Your friends and family breathe polluted air, and their health problems, like asthma and cancer, are common. You wake up to sirens warning of a fire at a nearby chemical plant, and your dinner is interrupted by text message alerts about the toxic leak down the street. Imagine this is where you live. Welcome to Sarnia's Chemical Valley, an area of southern Ontario where this is real life for hundreds of people, like Ada and her daughter Felicia. Like most Canadians, Ada believes her family has the right to clean air and a healthy environment, and she thinks the government should recognize that right too. Eco-Justice is helping Ada battle in court for her environmental rights to be legally recognized by the government. Meanwhile, the refineries and chemical plants keep on polluting. Of course, this doesn't just happen in Canada. Here's a story of a different valley. The residents here used to call this valley the Valley of Death. Surrounded by industrial facilities and their toxic emissions, the city of Cubatão in Brazil was one of the most polluted places in the world. Then Brazil stood up for Brazilians. In 1988, they changed their constitution to recognize each person's right to a healthy environment. Since then, the government has paid to clean up Cubatão's air and water. Charges have been laid against the worst polluters, and stronger laws have helped stop new offenders from putting people and the environment at risk. Brazil isn't alone. More than 100 nations around the world recognize their citizens' human right to a healthy environment. So why doesn't Canada? What's happening in Sarnia shouldn't happen in any of our communities, to any of our families. Learn more about what you can do to stand up for our water, our air, our rights. Visit ecojustice.ca.
So what can environmental rights do? They can provide a stimulus for stronger environmental laws. They can protect environmental laws from rollbacks by future governments. They promote democracy through greater citizen participation in decisions and actions to protect the environment. They ensure that the environment is on a level playing field with social and economic rights in decision making. They protect environmental rights of all Canadians, including vulnerable populations. In the lead up to the October 2019 federal election, there's an opportunity to engage with members of parliament and candidates that seek election and find out where they stand on environmental rights. On October 2018, we launched the Pledge for Environmental Rights, a simple statement of principle that provides an opportunity for politicians to make a public commitment to this issue. Just as we did with the municipal declarations, we need volunteers that are willing to organize locally and go to their local MP and candidates and ask them to sign on. There are 338 ridings with multiple candidates in each, so we need your help. We want to send a signal that this is an issue that is important to voters. Ultimately, we're looking to get parties to include a commitment to a federal environmental bill of rights. While there's no guarantee that politicians live up to their promises, a public commitment provides us something concrete to refer back to after the election as we urge the government to introduce a federal environmental bill of rights. So how can you help? To begin with, please use our online form to email your MP and candidates and share this with friends and family. We'll do the work for you on the behalf. You can visit Lynn on the other side. I'll share some more details. Apart from an email, you can get involved locally. Blue Dot is powered by volunteers. Local teams work locally to raise awareness and our leaders, to let our leaders know that people in Canada want their rights recognized. You can sign up to join a team in your area or start one if there's not one already. We have created a pledge toolkit that makes it super easy to get things going in the community, including resources you need to communicate the importance of environmental rights and arrange a meeting with your MP. So many volunteers, such as Lynn, pictured here, have successfully met with their MP to talk about this issue and have had a very positive experience. We hope that you'll contribute to this effort. And I'll now pass this back to Fernando. He's going to talk about the Vancouver Climate Hub and what we're doing. Thank you very much. I might be back.
Well, thank you so much, Erzsi. Thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Fernando. As I have already said, I'm one of the co-captains of the hub. I am a climate reality leader. I was trained in Houston in 2016. I served as a mentor in 2017 in the training where Erzsi got trained. Sadly, I'm not her mentor, but she has the best mentor in all of BC, Judy Feinstein, who all of you know. So I cannot live up to Judy's standards, so that's great. But after being a mentor and having a bunch of mentees from all across Canada and the United States, I became involved in starting the Victoria Climate Hub, and we gathered data successfully from Victoria. And I'm also on the National Council of Earth Guardians, a US-based organization that includes Canada International Council, weirdly. And they're the organization that is behind the Youth v. Gov, so the young people suing the United States government for inaction on climate. And I coordinate mostly their foreign and their international policies and how we want to bring grassroots activism of these kids suing the government to the global stage at global conferences like the Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco earlier this year. So what do we do in the Climate Hub? So a statement that is very interesting is that 54% of the population of the world lives in cities, 75% of global energy consumption happens in cities, 80% of greenhouse gas emissions happen in cities. Cities are where we all live. All of us live in Vancouver, and it's a beautiful city to live in, but it's also an example of what's right and what's wrong with our world. We have a city that continues to promote modes of transportation that are not sustainable, even in Vancouver, which is the most livable and most walkable city in Canada. We live in cities that do not put pedestrians and public transit before cars, and who don't put the will and the needs of future generations above short-term election promises and things that get you elected. So we wanted to create a project, and that was done nationwide through the National Climate League, to make sure that we have local citizens engaged in a pragmatic frame of decision-making towards solving the climate crisis. So the Climate Hub takes people from all sides of the aisle, from people from small local grassroots activists to local small businesses or big businesses, from small diverse communities, minority communities like my own, to the normal suburban parents, and anyone who wants to have a clean air, clean water, clean land, and who wants to make sure that we have local action is welcome to join our hub. And our three core values is our hub needs to be diverse, our hub needs to be citizen-driven, and our hub needs to be local. Because many times we find a key problem is that climate action is not diverse. We see many times it's the same core of people. It's very people who have the privilege to be able to engage within climate action and search for climate actions themselves. As a hub, we want to make sure that they don't have to necessarily come to us, but that we come to them. We are also citizen-driven, meaning I take a holistic meaning of citizenship, because I'm not a Canadian citizen, so I cannot say that it's citizen-driven by myself. But in the idea that people who live in the city and who are citizens of the city, who are residents and who form a part of Vancouver, are the ones who are dictating the policies and are the ones pushing forward for better action that they need. It's not someone else, it's not the National Climate League, but it's us. It's us, the people of Vancouver, taking action for the people of Vancouver, for future generations. So we basically take, and then the last, citizen-driven, diverse, and local. And local, of course, meaning we focus more on local action than we do on federal and provincial policies, because we see that local climate action gets often overlooked, and it's the one where we have the most potential right now to act. So we take 3 sustainable development goals, and the first one is community sustainability, affordability, and good transportation. We see that the fact of how we grow our cities, how we live in our cities, how that 75% of the energy consumption gets carried out, where it goes, is key to whether we will solve the climate crisis. Because that 54% of us who continue living in cities is only getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if we don't start taking a look at how the cities can be shaped in a way that includes everyone, and that is fair to social, and is socially prosperous, is environmentally prosperous, and is fiscally prosperous. And that's something that we want to really bring in, is the fact that to be able to create a successful, livable city, it needs to have an environment that is successful. We also want to take, of course, urgent action on climate. We are, at the end of the day, the Community Climate Hub, where we want to make sure that we solve the climate issue. And also 17 is a key priority, which is forming partnerships. Many times we see all of these organizations isolated or taking a very left-wing or very right-wing or very unique and dogmatic approach. And that is great. Like, I'm all for intersectional thinking on climate issues. I'm very progressive. Well, I'm fairly progressive. And I used to be much more progressive. And my Trotsky days are over. But he did get killed like 20 minutes away from my home in Mexico City, so there's a close connection with Leon Trotsky, but not anymore. So I am fairly progressive, but I also think that we don't have enough time to talk about moral purity and to talk about if we don't agree 100% of the things, then we cannot work together. And in a society that is ever more divided, where we're seeing people in France literally burning cars because they don't want their gasoline prices rising, we need to create a place where everyone feels safe, where everyone feels welcome, and where everyone, as long as they care about not boiling alive in the next 12 years, everyone can come and collaborate with us. And I think that's what we need. We need places where everyone is welcome, where we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya with one another. I think tree-hugging hippies like ourselves are very good at that. And forming partnership with businesses, local community associations, schools, and other NGOs within the area. And so that is a point. the Vancouver Hub is here to unite civil society, business, government, and citizens. So, oh God, that's tough. And hubs help provide support to citizens collectively to express their eagerness for transition, for a new climate economy. And our plan right now is we already gathered data, which was our first segment. And now where I come in as a new co-chair is to make sure that we do what I was saying, which is not wait for the climate activists to reach us, but try to reach people who are not yet climate activists. The majority of the average Vancouverite still doesn't put climate change in their top 3 priorities when casting a ballot. Even though we have a strong environmental community, it's nowhere nearly as big and loud and active as the ones in Montreal, as the ones in Europe. And that is a problem because I think we have huge potential for that, and people care. People just need someone talking to them. And we live in a city that is as diverse, that if we want a climate movement that really engages everyone, the climate movement needs to be as diverse as the city and as local as the city. They need to look, sound, and have the same priorities as it. And that's where we come in. We want to be able to reach, to go to present to schools, to every single community association we can get our hands on, to present our slide deck to the Rotary clubs, to talk to children, to talk to old people, to talk to parents, to talk to everyone. And make sure that everyone has the opportunity. And then those who decide to take it, they can join us. Because it's time that we open the doors of the climate movement and that we reach them and they don't have to reach us. Because we're already preaching to the converted. I'm pretty sure that everyone here believes in climate change. And if you don't, then you're very brave. I really admire that. And so we have many community climate hubs. The one that I founded is in Victoria. There's Vancouver, North Vancouver. I think we're very, very varied. And we have that goal. We want to learn whether something works in Calgary that we can implement here. Calgary might have a position, not talk about the Kinder Morgan pipeline. We might talk about the Kinder Morgan pipeline. Doesn't mean we fight. The point is that each hub has that unique liberty and creative agency to be able to pursue whatever they think is more relevant to the people in the city. If we go to Victoria, then we can talk about how hip replacements relate to climate change because we have a very old population. But if we're in Vancouver, we can talk about other things. And it really is about how we can custom tailor the message to each city and to how we can make sure that we localize and micro-target, how we can make sure that everyone who wants and who cares about the planet and who cares about their life, their health, and themselves and their children, which I think is everyone, really is able to find a place where they're treated equally, where they're treated fairly, where they don't need to be afraid of being engaged. And we gather data, because I like data. I like stories, but I also like data a lot. So, I mean, we all believe in scientists, that's why we're here, so I believe in data a lot. And all of the ones that have a red check on it, it means that we have gathered data from the city. And there was a previous data gathering or kind of a previous report before we started the hubs that showed that Vancouver, the prediction by the National Climate League was that Vancouver was going to be the most climate-friendly city, of the large cities in Canada, the most climate-friendly. And that makes us look back and say, okay, we're pretty good, we don't need to move anywhere. But in reality is that if we compare ourselves to cities in other countries, and if we compare ourselves to the city that we need to be, we're still shorthand. And the amount of opportunities that we can have by truly being the greenest city, not just a nice copyright name and nice publicity, but truly being the greenest city is an amount of development, an amount of interest, an amount of public relations that can help our city a lot and can help us grow economically, socially, environmentally. So there's a National Climate League. If you want to take a look at the indicators, you can Google the National Climate League 2018 standings, or send us an email if you have any questions about data. We'd be really happy to chat with you. So what can you do as someone in Canada? And that really comes to the question of what each individual can do. I'm a very strong believer in individual responsibility, particularly in places like Canada. I grew up in Mexico, where my summer job was $250 an hour. And I was very excited that after working full-time during the entire summer, I could buy half an iPad after spending my bus fare and all of this. So for me, really coming to a country where there's so much wealth and there's so much opportunity and there's so much access to information, it really tells me that every single person here can do a lot. Because me earning $250 an hour, $250 an hour in Mexico, that still put me in the middle high income scale worldwide. So a person here in Canada who's above poverty line is still high income worldwide. So the amount of things that we can do is if we exploit this human potential, this amount of knowledge, of education, of access to opportunities, and we make sure that they're evenly distributed, we can really make a big change. So right now, one of the things that we can do is make sure that our carbon footprint and our environmental footprint, our ecological footprint is as small as possible. There are really some nice things. I really like the images and colors, and I mean, the results are nice, but I like colors. I'm still 19, so I like colorful things. I'm a teenager. So footprintcalculator.org, so if you want to take a picture of that and check it later, you're very welcome to. And footprintcalculator.org. Okay, and then you can check how many Earths it takes for your lifestyle to do. My dad is a pilot. I fly a lot. I probably consume too many Earths. But I need to go back and see my 3-year-old sister, so there's priorities. But I also really think that I also try to reduce my footprint in other places. So it's really important. It's not like my mom's a nutritionist, and she tells me you can drink Coke if you want. It's not bad for you. As long as you don't drink Coke and then eat a donut and then eat ice cream and then do all of these things. I can fly back home and see my 3-year-old sister who I love. I absolutely adore her. But on the other hand, I need to reduce my emissions somewhere else. It is not something that you need to just go live in a cave and eat kale planted outside the cave for you to survive. I know many of us tree-hugging hippies really want to do that, and that sounds awesome. But you don't actually need to do that. So take a look at this and take a look at the resources available. Support renewable energy projects like the David Suzuki Foundation. And there comes a question. So can we change? And the answer is we have all the technology at hand to change. We will hear about more tech and innovation related to climate change. And we have all the data and all the info and all the things that we need. But can we change? Yes, we have what we need. We have the human potential, we have the ideas. Will we change? That's a question. And I actually think the answer to this is a yes. My big question is how many people will die before we realize that? I used to grow up in a country that is poor, and I used to go every single year to subsistence farmers up in the mountains. And these people, when they get a lot of rain, their crops wash away. And when they get a lot of drought, their crops die. And they have no help from the government whatsoever. And I go there and I take a look at those kids and I help them go to, and I fundraise for money and we take them to buy supplies for school. And when they get sick, they need to stop eating dinner for a month. And when I think about all of these things and all the things that we need to give up here for these people not to die, for Indian farmers in Maharashtra in India not to have to kill themselves so the government is able to take care of their children because the government wouldn't take care of children unless they were orphans. It's not about whether we will change, because we will. It's whether about how much pain will we cause as a species to the least and to the least powerful and the most vulnerable in our society before we realize that enough is enough. And there's hope. We did the Paris Agreement. We're having another COP. Jeffrey is going to talk more about that. And there is hope, but it's really about how we can push these targets to be higher. We cannot keep having the same targets that we had when Stephen Harper was in office. We cannot keep having cities greenwash their climate policies. Because whenever we don't do the actions that are proper, it's not whether we're going to get 1 degree or more. I think it's how many thousands of deaths will we cause. How many children will we see dying and starving in the streets? How many Syrian crises will we have? And it will hit us last. But when it does, we will finally realize what it's like to be on the other side of the wall. I mean, I say kind of a metaphorical wall, but who knows if Trump will build one north of my country. So our world depends on it. And it's about how we can talk to everyone and how can we include people in the climate crisis. And if we are already converted, how we can make sure that all of the conversations that we have about climate change are not of whether we win against a conservative or not. Or how can I tell that person something they care about so they care about the same thing as me too. It's about accepting that their concerns are right, that people want to live happy and successful lives, and that sometimes they feel that our carbon taxes will hinder them. But it's about how can we do that. So thank you. Thank you for tolerating my crying. Be warriors of land, water, and earth. And I love cheesiness. And if you have any questions, please put it there. So we're gonna do a video. Do you want to do it? Colleen. Okay, so we look here. Beautiful crowd. Perfect.
So yours works, mine doesn't.
Hello, everybody. We're coming to you live from Vancouver, British Columbia, at our watch party event, 24 Hours of Reality. My name is Erzsi.
And I'm Fernando.
And this is everybody here. So we're getting excited to watch the event. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I already, okay, so Catherine, she leads the UBC Hub. It's not related directly to our hub. We're not the same initiative, but we're probably going to collaborate. She's pretty cool. And so she's interested in the intersection of human rights and environmental law. And I could try to explain what she does. But again, I'm 19. All of these people are clearly smarter than me. So I will let her explain. She has an undergraduate degree from the University of Cambridge and holds a graduate diploma in law from City University in London. And as I said, her current research focuses on the intersection of human rights and environmental law. So thank you, Kate, for coming. Please give her a warm welcome.
As Fernando said, I am just graduated from doing a Master's of Law at UBC in researching the connection between human rights and climate change, and particularly the intersection with some new developments in business and human rights law and climate change, which I'm not going to talk about this evening, but if anyone is interested in that, I am happy to chat about it afterwards. And I think it connects to the work that I do at the UBC Climate Hub as well. So what I wanted to talk to you about this evening is the work that the UBC Climate Hub is doing and our goal of building climate community. And I'm going to start very briefly, and I will try and keep this brief because I know we have a lot of great speakers. Start very briefly by introducing the UBC Climate Hub because we're a very new initiative, and we want to try and make sure that people are aware of us and aware of the possibility of collaborating. I'm then going to talk a little bit about the need to build social and political will on climate change, which we believe is the missing factor in climate action, and that's really what the mission of the UBC Climate Hub is about. And there's a lot of similarities between the work that we're doing and the work that Fernando was describing that the Vancouver Hub is doing. So I won't repeat too much of that. And then I'm going to talk very briefly about one of the initiatives we're currently running to try and build climate community and to try and build social and political will on climate change, which is our climate mentorship program. And we're currently looking for community mentors. So if anyone has a long history of working as a climate change activist, or a short history, or is working in a field related to climate change in their professional life, then we'd love to hear from you and have you be involved in this program. So what is the UBC Climate Hub? The student-driven, sorry about the typo there, initiative was founded earlier this year by a group of students who came together to try and advocate for UBC, which, as I'm sure many of you know, is a huge institution, a really large university, even by the standards of many universities in North America, with a lot of resources to do more on climate change and to put those resources towards kind of climate solutions and making sure that those are available. This is some of the students in the hub. And after a lot of advocacy at the university, we've now got ourselves established, at least for the next couple of years, as a hub that will coordinate climate change initiatives at UBC, make climate action more available to UBC students, and climate solutions that are being developed at UBC, making sure that those incorporate partners from the community and that they can be actually implemented and put into action. We work on the principle that effective climate action should be youth-led, that young people who are going to be most affected by climate change and who are already seeing their futures affected by climate change, many of them saying things like, well, can we even have children at this point in time what kind of world are we going to be bringing those children into, that these people can be some of the most effective advocates on climate action. We believe that the messaging on climate change should be focusing on what we can do, that it should be hopeful, that it should be engaging, that we should be encouraging people to take action at whatever scale they can, and that it should be centered on justice, that it should recognize that, as Fernando was saying, the communities who are going to be most vulnerable to climate change and who are already most vulnerable to climate change are often those communities who are already the most economically disadvantaged and the most vulnerable in other ways. And also that when we transition to clean energy economies, we also risk leaving behind some communities as we do that. And that is another justice issue, but it can also be a real barrier to climate action, and I think that's something that we see here in Canada. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. So, as I say, we think the missing piece on climate action is political and social will. And we think that this is in part because of the way that people have approached communicating around climate change until now. So there's been a real emphasis on what's often referred to in academic circles as an information deficit approach, that if we just tell people more about climate change, more about what's happening, if we can prove the science, then people will start to take it more seriously. And I think what we're seeing is that that doesn't work, because at a certain level, we can believe in the phenomenon and still be really, really, really unclear about how we can do anything to change it. And actually, the more information you have about this global phenomenon, the more impossible it can begin to seem that we can do anything. So instead, we think that if we emphasize communicating through art, through storytelling, through connecting climate change to individual people's lives, we can do more potentially to address it. And so that's the approach that we are trying to take. And I think that that approach has recently kind of demonstrated its importance. So the pictures on this slide, these two are, the two on the edges are pictures from climate protests. So this one is one from the Philippines, where people have recently made a petition to the Philippines Commission on Human Rights asking them to hold big polluters, so large multinational corporations responsible for large quantities of fossil fuel emissions, responsible for their actions. And that's been an incredibly successful piece of advocacy, piece of litigation, kind of tying into what Erzsi was saying about human rights and climate change earlier. And the one from the top is some of the protesters outside the climate negotiations at COP15, which I've included because it was almost a decade ago and because I was somewhere in one of those crowds, and I feel like we're still having some of the same conversations that we were having a decade ago. But then there's also this picture from the recent protests in France that Fernando also alluded to, from the Gilets Jaunes movement, which is protesting against essentially a measure that has been passed to prevent climate change. And that's not all they're protesting about. And there's a lot more to that story. But I think it really emphasizes the potential for action at a local level, if it's not done in a way that's inclusive of many communities, if it's not done in a way that considers justice and considers equity, to actually hinder our ability to meet international targets that get set in these international negotiations that are going on today. And so I just wanted to include that as a kind of reminder to all of us that while we're here because world leaders are gathering in Poland to talk about climate change and to think about pathways to emissions, unless we have that support from everybody in our communities and not just from the tree-hugging hippies, as Fernando would call us all, then we're not going to be able to make progress. So to touch then back on our mentorship project, one of the things that we're trying to do is to lower the barriers to new people getting involved in taking action on climate change or learning about climate change, and create new and interesting ways for people to learn about these issues and to see themselves as part of the solution. And one of the ways we've been doing that is through a mentorship program at UBC, which has 150 students in the program. People are meeting every few weeks in groups of about 8 or 10 to talk about issues related to climate change. And the discussions are generally themed around particular topics. So we have a group that's meeting to talk about art and climate change, or a group that's meeting to talk about carbon sinks and biodiversity. And I would love to invite any of you, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, who are involved in climate action in some way, who'd like to meet other people who are maybe newer to the movement and who are trying to learn things, to maybe get involved with that program. And I can tell you a little bit more about what that would look like. So I'm going to leave it there because I'm conscious we have lots of other great speakers to hear from this evening. But thank you all for listening, and please follow us, come and chat to me, come to some of our events. We look forward to seeing you there.
Great, thank you very much. All right. Yeah, that was a weird flickering thing back and forth. I don't know. Let's hope it stops doing that. Okay, so next up, Fernando, did you want to come introduce this guy? Should I do it? Okay. So Jeffrey Key is a climate policy analyst and project coordinator. He has been an NGO observer at the UN Climate Change Conference representing youth and environmental organizations since 2017. His areas of specialization include international climate negotiations, environmental policy analysis, climate mitigation and adaptation policy planning, capacity building, governmental affairs, and public engagement. Welcome, Jeffrey, to the stage.
My name is Jeffrey. I'm currently a third-year political science student at UBC. As Erzsi said, so I'm currently a program coordinator with the BC Council for International Cooperation with their Youth Climate Change program. We send a youth delegation to the United Nations Climate Change conferences, as well as various other United Nations conferences every single year. So as we are speaking right now, our youth delegation is currently in Katowice, Poland, attending COP24. So today I'm here to talk about youth-led climate action on a global stage. As Erzsi and Fernando, as well as Kate, talk about what climate action has been going on in Vancouver on a local level, I'm going to talk about what's going on the international level, more regards to the Paris Agreement, as well as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So just want to do a little kind of a show of hands. Which global agreement do you think is currently in effect? The first one is Kyoto Protocol. Anyone? You can just show your hands up if you think Kyoto Protocol is currently in effect. Okay. The Paris Agreement? And both? Okay. Cool. Well, the right answer is actually just the Kyoto Protocol, because the Paris Agreement does not go into effect until 2020. And right now they are in Poland trying to negotiate the last bit of the Paris Agreement. So just a little introduction as to what the UN Climate Change Conference is. Right now what's happening in Poland is the Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, or both. But I think we will run through that. So the first type is the Conference of Parties, which, the COP is the supreme decision-making body for the entire UN Framework Change Convention. And they meet once a year and in different locations around the world. The second type of meeting is the intersessionals, as we call the subsidiary body meetings. They happen every year in May in Bonn, Germany, as negotiators prepare for the annual big COP events in the winter. And the third is the specialized meetings happening year-round in Bonn or in New York. These are the different meetings happening under the different mechanisms of the UN Climate Change Convention. So I'm just going to talk about the first one, because that's the most important one, COP. So as like the Climate Reality program has 3 different questions, we too have 3 different questions. The first is where are we? Where do we want to go, and how do we go there? So these 3 questions are the guiding questions for the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention trying to raise up their ambition and implement the Paris Agreement. So to do that, let's recap about what's been going on since 2015, since COP21 in Paris, the exciting moments when the Paris Agreement got passed. So the Paris Agreement, as we know, passed in November 2015 at COP21 in Paris. It is the new global climate agreement that's going to succeed from 2020, that's going to replace the Kyoto Protocol, which is expiring in 2020. The Paris Agreement set a very ambitious long-term goal of limiting the Earth's warming to 2 degrees Celsius pre-industrial level, and to pursue a further limit to 1.5 degree above pre-industrial level. So from May 2016 until right now, there is something called the Paris Agreement Work Program that's being negotiated. So what is the Paris Agreement Work Program? It's basically it's a common set of guidelines for parties to the Paris Agreement being able to follow and how to implement the Paris Agreement. It seeks to set a common goal and common standard on how to review, report, communicate their national climate action under the Paris Agreement, and how can parties or countries strengthen their ambition under the Paris Agreement as well as the UN Framework Convention. As we all know, doing an international treaty is very hard. Achieving it is even harder. Accountability and transparency is absolutely crucial in the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And making sure parties will actually provide real, transparent information for international monitoring on climate action is the goal of the Paris Agreement Work Program that's been negotiated since 2016. So this year in Bonn, in May 2018, at the 48.1 subsidiary body meeting of the UN Climate Change Convention on Climate Change, the Paris Agreement Work Program was set to be completed at the session, but unfortunately did not. Like most people, negotiators in the climate space want to procrastinate, so we actually did not get to finish the PAWP on time. So there was an additional meeting being held in Bangkok, Thailand in September, where me and my colleagues were there trying to finish the Paris Agreement Work Program. So it's absolutely crucial that we will finish the work program in Katowice, Poland. So Katowice, Poland, December 2018 is basically the absolute deadline that countries need to finish this work program so the Paris Agreement can go into force next year. So I'm just going to talk about why kind of this agreement's work program is so hard to achieve. Because these are the negotiation items under the Paris Agreement work program. These are all drawing from different sections of the Paris Agreement. Parties need to agree to a common standard on accounting, on how to report information, how to write the reports, how to follow what timeline do parties follow when they submit these kind of information. One of the most important aspects of the Paris Agreement is the nationally determined contributions, as we call NDCs. So parties need to agree what kind of information do they need to submit to the United Nations. Do they need to submit what kind of gases are they going to account in their nationally determined contributions? Do we account for CO2? Do we account for nitrate oxide? Do we account for methane? These are all currently being negotiated in Katowice as we talk today. So another really hard reason why the Paris Agreement kind of is currently in a standstill is because there's very huge divide between the global north and the global south countries. As we know, there is something called the common but differentiated responsibilities, meaning global north countries like Canada contributed mostly to the global warming because of industrialization since the 19th century. While developing country like India, China, they just recently start industrialization, and they did not contribute to so many greenhouse gas emissions compared to developed country. And the global north, that's that's kind of the main reason the Paris Agreement is currently in a standstill, that Global South country wants more flexibility in terms of what they need to report, how many emissions they need to reduce, while the Global North country believe that we should all take a common and same approach, that all parties should follow a same standard in global greenhouse gas emission reduction. And another divide between the North and the South is Global South country tends to focus more on climate adaptation, because as we know, the developing countries are disproportionately affected by climate change impacts, like increased hurricanes, more extreme weather events, as well as poverty and malnutrition due to climate change. But while the Global North really wants the Global South countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emission as a priority. So currently the parties are arguing over whether mitigation is more important or adaptation is more important. I think this morning there was a negotiation on this, and the parties kind of all, the negotiation fell apart. So it's still a huge challenge. I really wanted to kind of give a very technical overview of the entire Paris Agreement work program, but I only have 15 minutes. So my colleagues and I from the British Columbia Council for International Cooperation Youth Delegation, we produced this massive policy position paper on the PAWP. If you're more interested in that, you can look for me, and I can give you the entire document. And just by way of introduction, this is my two colleagues, Ben and Colton, who are our technical negotiators. They are currently in Katowice, Poland, joining negotiations. Another reason I'm here to talk about youth negotiation is because we are all a part of the international youth climate movement, as we call YOUNGO. YOUNGO is a youth-led, youth-focused constituency that's mandated by the United Nations Framework Convention to represent global children and youth in climate negotiations. So we have 300 different non-governmental organizations that works around youth and climate change, and 4,000 different individual members across the world joining negotiations in different parts of the world under the United Nations Framework Convention. So YOUNGO has two different streams. The first one is policy operations. The second is activism and action. As young people, we have the energy and we have the capacity to lead great activism, protests, and march. And YOUNGO supports youth-led actions across the world in different COPs. This one was in COP23, COP23 in Bonn, where YOUNGO led an action calling for the speedy negotiation of the Paris Agreement rulebook, so the Paris Agreement work program. The second stream of YOUNGO is the policy operations aspect, because at the end of the day, we represent the children and youth interest in climate negotiations. Thus, YOUNGO has a team of policy negotiators. They're all young people under the age of 30, joining different countries in climate negotiations. So what do YOUNGO do is basically we track negotiations, we advance progressive policies within the climate space, we provide interventions on behalf of children and youth around the world, and we lobby for more ambitious climate action. This morning, my colleagues in Katowice just met with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres in Katowice and talk about what the UN can do to engage with young people in the climate space, and how the United Nations can help different countries to support climate actions domestically and locally. And my colleague here, Ben, just led a bilateral meeting with the EU chief negotiators and trying to advance YOUNGO's policy position regarding the Paris Agreement work program. YOUNGO also does interventions in different COP meetings. We provide statements regarding our vision on the Paris Agreement and different international negotiation items in different settings. In the middle is Yugoslavia Srivastava, my good friend. She is currently the focal point for Global South of young people around the world. She basically represents the entire Global South countries of young people of Global South countries in climate negotiations. YOUNGO also does capacity building opportunities. We bring young people from all over the world to come to a climate negotiation and teach them how to negotiate, teach them the technical aspects of the Paris Agreement and of different mechanisms under the Paris Agreement, and we allow them to be engaged in the entire UN space more effectively. We also have different technical working groups that's going year-round to produce policy positions, basically advancing more ambitious climate action. And one thing to note is YOUNGO as a constituency, we are actually involved in the negotiation of one portion of the Paris Agreement, which is called the Action for Climate Empowerment. It is the education, public awareness raising, and the training of general public in terms of climate action and increased national ambition in mitigation and adaptation. YOUNGO's involvement led to the Action for Climate Empowerment being the first finished negotiation item in the Paris Agreement. So young people can do great things if you involve them and give them the opportunity to do so. So I just came back from Katowice, Poland. That's why I'm currently in extreme jet lag mode. It's currently around, I think, 3 o'clock in Poland. We just finished this massive collective policy positions that outlines YOUNGO's position on all of the different aspects of the Paris Agreement work program. So we have 104 contributing authors putting in 1,000+ hours of collective work and produced a negotiation paper that covers all 12 negotiation areas of the Paris Agreement. Again, if you're interested, feel free to come to me and I can give you a copy of basically the policy position of the world's youth on the Paris Agreement. So to answer the question of where are we and where do we go from here? As you know, there is currently a climate negotiation in Katowice. This is the final stretch for the Paris Agreement before it actually gets implemented in 2020. We want a timely delivery. We want a timely delivery of the work program so the Paris Agreement can go into force on schedule. But we don't want this timely delivery to kind of jeopardize the ambition of global climate action, to jeopardize the ambitious goal that's set by the Paris Agreement. We still want countries to stick to their nationally determined contributions and being able to engage in climate action meaningfully and contribute to the global effort in combating climate change. Poland Katowice, it's a very interesting choice because it is a traditionally coal town in Poland. It's a massive, they have massive coal producing factories in the city. That's why we have very interesting stuff going on in this climate change conference. We actually have two huge boxes of literal coal in a climate change conference. As you can see, when participants enter into the negotiation rooms, they literally walk by these coal things and walk on the coal in a glass box on the ground. That's the way that the Polish presidency is reminding all of the climate negotiators that you guys are not welcomed here. It is the traditionally coal and oil powered country. Coal and oil still holds a large percentage of how Poland produces energy and how Poland exports its natural resources. So this is a very interesting choice of venue design. And also, they provide a free shuttle for COP, and the shuttle actually says powered by Polish oil and gas companies. And these cars are currently transporting climate negotiators 1 hour. So basically what happened is Katowice is a very small city in Poland. It absolutely has no capacity to host an international conference like COP24. They chose this so all the climate negotiators can live in another city. It's called Krakow, which is 1.5 hours away by car. So they provided free shuttles that's supplied by Polish oil and gas company to transport climate negotiators from Krakow all the way to Poland every single day, 1 hour, 1.5 hours ride. Again, Poland really doesn't like us. So as you can see, we still have lots of work to do in terms of raising ambition on climate action. Well, these these are all very kind of pessimistic stuff saying about Poland. Are we really going to achieve the deadline of implementing the Paris Agreement? Are we really going to kind of raise our ambition in terms of climate action? But when you look at these young people that are at the Conference of Youth, which is the annual preparatory meeting for YOUNGO 1 week before COP in Katowice, you see all these exciting faces and energetic faces. You realize that there are hope in this world that we can advance climate action. As we know, it's a youth-driven, it's a youth-led process. YOUNGO always trying to promote children and young people's interests in climate negotiations. And as we know, so how do we do that? Is basically we bring Global South youth delegates to COP every year. We support around 20 youth delegates from Global South countries to these conferences. We train them, we provide them capacity building opportunities, and we provide them badges so they can join the climate negotiations and represent their country, which are usually underrepresented in climate negotiations, and speak about their concerns. Climate change is a social justice issue. We need to pay more attention in regards to intergenerational equity, in regards to human rights issues. And the best way to do this is to increase youth representation in technical and political negotiations like the Paris Agreement negotiation. And we are all doing that to accelerate climate action. To answer kind of Fernando's question, can we change and will we change? The short answer is yes, we can. Everyone here, everyone sitting in that room, which is around 400 people, are all accelerating climate action. We are all joining negotiations. We are pushing country governments to take more action against climate change. And for sure, we are sending the Polish presidency a very clear and strong message that even if Poland is not on board, the entire world is. So how can people back in Vancouver kind of support international youth climate movements? We desperately need financial resources. We desperately need support from country governments to support our capacity building initiatives, to send Global South country youth delegates to international climate change conferences. We also need your attention in your own kind of domestic political elections, vote, and make a change on a national level. I'm very sorry, this negotiation is kind of, not negotiation, this meeting is kind of, not meeting, sorry. This presentation is kind of chaotic because I literally finished this slide on a plane, and I really want to go to sleep right now. Yeah, but if you have many more questions regarding Paris Agreement, feel free to come to me. Thank you.
Okay, so we are halfway done with our agenda. So now, if you have any questions, please remember to go into, yes, sli.do. And now we're going to have, okay, so we're going to have Emily Stanislaus, hopefully I pronounced that right. So she's going to talk about how renewable energy is empowering communities across the country. She's speaking on behalf, she's a part of the David Suzuki Foundations, and she's a communications specialist there. She does strategic storytelling and an IABC board member. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. Please give Emily a warm welcome.
Thank you all for having me here tonight. It's amazing to be here with so much great enthusiasm and energy about the climate movement. It helps me do my day job, so thank you so much. I'm here today to talk to you about Charged Up, which is our renewable energy campaign to accelerate renewable energy across Canada. So you've probably heard that public discourse is really muddy when it comes to climate change. Climate change, as we know at the Foundation, is pretty polarized. It's not exactly something you want to bring up at Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. But what we have realized in our research, both internally with our own audience and externally, is that local solutions cut through the divide. No matter what political side you're on, talking about local solutions like renewable energy is the way forward. So this is from a UK-based organization called Climate Outreach, and a lot of their research has helped really frame our own work with Charged Up. So they say that people must be able to relate to climate change through language that speaks to and validates their concerns, values, and identity so that they can understand their issues, see themselves in them, and feel motivated to take action. And this has become our raison d'etre as part of Charged Up. People power is the resource that will energize our renewable energy movement across the country. So part of my job is I get to profile amazing communities across the country who are really working forward on climate solutions. These are two that we have profiled. Oxford County is in the bottom left-hand corner, and that's a community that's really close to my heart because I'm a farm girl. I grew up in rural southwestern Ontario, and as you can imagine, it's a pretty conservative lifestyle. Not many people talk about climate change, and renewable energy has a huge stigma. Windmills are supposed to give you cancer. That's what I grew up learning. So hearing stories like this, stories of success, is amazing. This is a co-op that is on a farm, and so they've used both windmills and solar panels to protect their land. They work with First Nations in the area as well, and local residents are seeing the benefits of this co-op. They're seeing the money return right back into the community, and that's also helping really bridge that divide about renewable energy. People are able to talk about it more. And in the top right-hand corner, we have Louis Bull Tribe in Musqueam, Alberta, which is northern part of Alberta, and they have partnered with Iron and Earth, which trains former oil and gas workers. Some of you may be familiar with that organization, but they train former oil and gas workers to work in renewable energy, so they're really equipped to move into the new energy economy. And I'll show you their video in a little bit. So really, as I said, what we want to do is meet Canadians where they are, no matter where they are, from coast to coast. So we're focusing on public engagement, primarily storytelling, so shining light on local successes, because there's a lot of doom and gloom as part of the climate change narrative, and we really want to show that road forward that's been presented to us tonight. Secondly, we really want to build capacity in communities, so having people organize at a local level on actions that matter to them related to renewable energy. The third is building a network of renewable energy champions towards the energy transition. So starting at a local level, but then also working on provincial and national policy change. Ultimately, that's going to build a collective voice on policy outcomes so we can move forward. So following the Blue Dot model, which Erzsi really outlined very well, we're going to cultivate leadership across our organization and towards our audience. So as you can see, we have 1 million Canadians per week that we reach as part of our DSF audience. It's online, through email, social media. And our ultimate goal is to have renewable community champions, so leaders like yourselves and grassroots supporters that in the next few years we would love to see total 80,000 across the country. And who are we looking at? Everyone. As we mentioned, we want everyone to feel like they have a part in the narrative. Essentially working with community-led projects, renewable energy business and co-ops, working with Indigenous communities, cities, progressive policymakers, and other academics, NGOs, the list goes on and on. So we launched a year ago, and these are some of our accomplishments right now. We're a really small team that works on this full-time, but again, the passion is what drives us forward, and these are just some of our successes. We've met with hundreds of leaders in the field. We've had over 48,000 signatures on our online federal action, which you can sign at the table back there. And we had a great event with David where he got very enthusiastic, and whenever he gets enthusiastic, he waves his hands like that. So for the stories so far, we've profiled 10 communities over the last year. And it's been a really great process because what we do is we come to the communities and we say, okay, capacity-wise, what are you missing right now? What could you really advance on if we provided you the opportunity? So as I mentioned with Oxford County, we actually helped them with some policy asks. We helped with our government relations team, help them draft some materials that they could then take forward to become a renewable community. So they are now a renewable city on par with Vancouver, so they have that goal. And I'm now going to show you another amazing success story about a renewable city, Regina. This recently happened last month where the Municipal Council in Regina put forward a motion to become 100% renewable by 2050. So this is a case of, you wouldn't necessarily think of Regina as progressive, and we're really excited about this, and this is our latest story that has just come out. So if I could get some support, yeah, bring that video to you in a second.
It's hard to make a change. You can't have it happen like that. You have to convince people and have people on your side.
So this is what we think we know about solar power.
It's a renewable energy.
The power is from the sun's UV rays.
And it's a solution for climate change.
Well, climate change is a serious thing, and it's happening when we burn coal or use fossil fuels.
They produce lots of greenhouse gases.
And it's like they're adding blankets to the atmosphere, which is keeping all the heat in.
So if we look at this graph, we see that 40% of our electricity comes from coal, 35% from natural gas.
We looked at a graph, and solar wasn't even on it for what kind of power we used here in Saskatchewan.
And then one is other. So does anybody see solar on our pie graph right now? No.
Like less than 1% of Saskatchewan is solar.
I want you to open up the atlas to a map of Canada. The map that we talked about in class shows how much solar energy is hitting certain regions of Canada.
Best place to get solar is probably right here.
Regina.
Obviously, a lot of people haven't seen this. We live down in the southern part of Saskatchewan, and as you can see on the map, there's a lot of red, and where there's a lot of red, we can produce a lot of solar energy and we get a lot of sunlight, whereas where it's blue, it's not.
So do we have a lot of solar in Regina?
No. We barely have any like solar parks or panels.
Why?
I don't know why. We should, but we just don't, and we should obviously have more because we have the most potential kilowatt hours in Canada.
I'm a big proponent of experiential learning where kids get hands-on experience or get to see things up close, getting outside.
It's our vision that, wind and sun, which we relate to very much in our culture, could provide us with the energy that's required not only for ourselves, but for all of Canada, all of the universe.
So to our understanding, this is the only utility-scale wind, solar, and battery storage project in Canada. So it's the first of its kind. Getting out to Cowessess and seeing the install up close was incredible.
The wind turbine was way bigger than I thought it would be.
If you have the batteries, it stores the energy that you create during the day, so you can use it at night.
The reason we invested our own money into this project is because the power that comes from this site, we sell it.
I think it's important for the kids to understand that there's an economic side because the economics is what's going to drive renewable energy.
And the money that we made from the wind turbine and the batteries, we actually saved that all up and we use it to put towards the solar panels. So do you guys want to go look at the solar panels now? Okay, let's head over. There you go.
Wow. When I saw them, I was like, holy, that's a lot of solar panels. Well, I've never seen anything like that before.
It was cool though, because
There's a lot of solar panels.
And in a year, they would produce 560,000 kilowatt hours.
So that's an example of some of the storytelling that we do, and we work with local storytellers. So we never go in and say, let's tell your story. We work with locals to really uplift and amplify their stories. And this is the one that I was mentioning with Louis Bull Tribe in Musqueam, Alberta.
Having our membership do the installations, having them be a part of the process. What happens there is it resonates down to every community member, and everyone can say, my cousin installed that, my uncle installed that, my auntie, my niece. There's that connection that you have that pride of ownership.
We partnered up with Iron Earth for this particular project, and with Louis Bull out of Musqueam, Alberta, to provide training, skills training for the solar industry through our 5-day solar training program. And also with that solar training program comes a real installation where the students get to have their hands on an installation here on the Louis Bull daycare.
We were lucky enough to be graciously welcomed into this community. We participated in really special cultural activities, and then with local participants in the community, we worked on this installation shoulder to shoulder.
The cultural integration was a huge success. I totally believe it was, and the participants that partook, they really enjoyed that also. Some of them never took part in a pipe ceremony, a sweat. Some of them never even had moose meat. But I think it goes back to the understanding, I believe, and what the treaties are, that we as First Nations and Canadian citizens, we need to take care of each other, take care of the land, and take care of the future generations.
Ethical production of energy is of paramount importance. Failing to do so has a tremendous cost. These days, that's also the financial cost. And the whole time, the environmental costs have been there. They're only starting to now be quantified.
It's important to me that this is clean energy. It shows our responsibility toward environmental stewardship. It shows our responsibility in creating sustainability for those next 7 generations, our grandkids, their grandkids. I mean, if we can prove this can be done here in a First Nation community, I believe every municipality or every county or every city, village has that opportunity to move in this direction also, so they can become more self-sufficient on their own, but also create capacity development and have people trained in their local community.
Feeling charged up? Visit davidsuzuki.org/chargedup for more information or to get involved. Together, we have the power to make change.
All right, so what does success look like to us? Well, it's the videos, it's the stories that we are sharing, and it's also grassroots renewable energy powering up across the country. That's our ultimate vision, and we know that with our supporters' help, we can get there. So much like Blue Dot, as I mentioned, Charged Up focuses on local empowerment to make a national difference. What we're seeing both in Canada and especially to the south with our neighbors in the States is that municipal leadership is where people feel like they can have the most impact, especially when provincial and or national governments are not progressing the way that we would like to see them. And the sense of community that and movements like Blue Dot have achieved is exactly what we're going for. And environmental rights and climate action are so intrinsically linked that it just makes sense for our organization to be heading this way. So these are some of the communities, these are some of the communities that we have been working with across the country. It's really nice to visualize that. And I'm about to show you a very fancy slide because this gives me some hope. That's ultimately what we would like to see happen with our Charged Up network, is that there's someone in the furthest part of the country who feels connected to solutions. And I'll leave you with this quote from Randa Hill of Oxford County. She says, "Be prepared to be surprised by the community's passion for renewables. Keep moving forward. The end is worth it." So thank you all so much. And if you have any questions about Charged Up or the David Suzuki Foundation, I'm happy to answer. And thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm a Microsoft person. I don't know how to operate my Macs, so there should be someone who's happy that I'm a Microsoft person in the back. But so I'm gonna introduce David. So David is a person who should be happy by the fact that I use Microsoft stuff. So David Carley is a climate reality leader, trained in Los Angeles, and is passionate about pioneering new technologies and how they relate to us solving the climate crisis. And he works as a senior customer success manager at Microsoft. And he has a background in both engineering, business, and tech. So I'm really interested in just hearing how current advancements in technology and entrepreneurship and what the tech sector is doing and how it can help us survive. Thank you very much, David.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having me. What spurred this for me was when I attended the Climate Reality Leadership in August. Al Gore said something that resonated for me. He said, if we could take the velocity that's happening in the digital revolution and apply that to the climate revolution, that is something that we need. Because any of you who here are obviously involved in technology in your personal lives know how fast it goes. I've been at Microsoft for 18 years, and it's still a roller coaster ride. Things move so fast. Innovation is happening so quickly. And I came away and I thought, how can I apply that to climate change? And how can individuals like yourselves in the audience and people that you know use technology to have an impact in your day-to-day lives? So I'm going to do two topics today, both very, very passionate for me. One is electric vehicles, and the other is artificial intelligence. So the first one around electric vehicles. This is sort of a synopsis of where we're at here in BC. So transportation represents about 39% of our carbon dioxide emissions, which is very high. That includes everything from cars, trucks, airplanes, etc. The interesting fact is that BC represents the largest delta between basically the highest price for gasoline versus the lowest price of electricity. You know what's super interesting? Fernando made the comment today. Saturday there were riots in France, people burning cars because of their rage about the price of gas. Do you know how much the price of gas is in France? It's cheaper than here. I think they need to get out a bit more. We have 1,500 charging stations in BC, lots of places to charge. And on the 20th of November, the BC government made a really good stand. So they introduced a zero emissions vehicle mandate that says that by 2025, 10% of new vehicles have to be low emissions, which is basically electric or hydrogen fuel cell. By 2030, it's going to be 30%, and by 2040, it's going to be 100% of new vehicles sold in this province have to be low emissions, which is really good. If you go and buy a new electric vehicle today, you get $5,000 off the sticker price, and you can even get up to $6,000 for your existing vehicle under this program called Scrap It. You get access to the HOV lanes if you're driving with a single occupant in the vehicle. There's lots of EVs to choose from. When I first started getting into EVs about 7 or 8 years ago, there was really only 3. And now there's 39 that you can choose from here in BC, and there's more and more coming in every year. The average range of the vehicles now is around about 240 kilometers per charge, which is more than enough for most people. And some of the prices that you can get even for a second-hand electric vehicles are quite affordable, around sort of $15,000. For a brand new one, you're looking at maybe $30,000, $35,000 for some of the options. So the price is coming down, the range is going up. The other thing I love, I've been driving an electric vehicle now for 5 years, and I'm saving on average about $2,000 to $2,800 a year on gasoline, no oil changes, no maintenance. So there's some really good benefits from that perspective. We're around about 15,000 electric vehicles in BC, and that chart that you can see at the bottom right is that trajectory of the adoption of electric vehicles in BC. So we're really starting to see it ramp up, which is great. And that chart or the map is a website that you can go to called plugshare.com, which will show you where all the charging stations are, not just in BC, but across the world. I often get this question, it actually came up earlier this evening, around, oh, but isn't the batteries, emit more carbons in the production than a gasoline vehicle? So these 3 charts here, or 3 bars here, the first represents a gasoline vehicle, and the blue represents the manufacturing, and the red represents the actual emissions. The second bar, which is a topical one, is if you were to have an electric vehicle in Alberta. Now, what's the main source of electricity generation in Alberta? Anybody? Coal, indeed. So even with coal-fired power, it's still better than a gasoline vehicle if you're driving an EV in Alberta. If you're driving an EV in BC, where about 98% of our electricity comes from hydro, which is very, very clean in terms of emissions, you can see a dramatic reduction compared to a gasoline vehicle, even when you incorporate the emissions created in generating and disposing of the battery. These charts represent from the generation of the vehicle all the way through to the recycling and disposition of that vehicle. Something that you can do, and this is what I did a couple of years ago, is there's a group, it's a government-funded group here in BC called eMotive, and what that allows, basically their mandate is to just drive awareness of electric vehicles in the public. So they do lots of shows, they do lots of test driving, those sorts of things, and you can get involved yourself. They love volunteers coming, they'll train you, and then you can go out and talk to people about electric vehicles and help them get educated. So that's something that you can do. Calls to action with regards to electric vehicles: be the change that you're promoting. I know there's a couple of people in the room that I've met that drive electric vehicles. Be the change that you want and live the dream of driving electric. It is a lot of fun, can save you a lot of money, and it's the change that we need, especially when 39% of our emissions come from transportation. Be that ambassador and check out emotivebc.com or .ca and help champion and spread the word. And then there are local groups there's Viva here in Vancouver, there's the Victoria EV Club. You can be members of those groups and learn more about EVs and start to sort of spread the word. So the second topic is around artificial intelligence and how can that accelerate some of these solutions that we have for climate change. So I work for Microsoft in my day job, and Microsoft has created a group called AI for Good. And part of that is to do with accessibility and people with disabilities, but there's also a part of that called AI for Earth. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. So AI for Earth deals with these four categories. So agriculture, sustainable agriculture, water conservation, biodiversity, and climate change. So basically what they're doing, Microsoft has a big cloud compute environment where you can run things in that environment. There's got some very smart artificial intelligence modules that you can use, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But the AI for Earth program gives people, and I'll show some of them in a minute, free access to this cloud for them to run their services. There's technical support and training. You get to go to the AI Summit in Seattle with a whole bunch of other organizations and educational institutions from around the world. If you do want to learn more about it, you can go to microsoft.com/AI for Earth. There's hundreds and hundreds of organizations around the world that have received grants, but these are some here in Western Canada that I thought were really interesting. One which was really good was, actually across Canada, was the University of Waterloo is using AI to do prediction around wildfires, which could be very, very applicable here in BC as well. So what I've done is I've built a bit of a demonstration that I'm going to show you. And the premise for this was actually brought up to me a couple of months ago from a former, it was Tennille actually, but she trained with us in Los Angeles. And she said no I don't, thank you though. BC Hydro. Well, snowpacks are very, very important to BC Hydro. In the winter, snow will fall in the mountains, and they are constantly sending people up there to measure the amount of snow, because in the spring, when that snow melts, that becomes our electricity. So, let me just break out of this and show you. So, what we did, I worked with one of our data scientists here at Microsoft, and the image on the left is a satellite image of an area in the summer. This is our baseline. So what we can do is we can use artificial intelligence to 3D model that canyon. So we can determine, we know where all the dips and troughs are. A dip and a trough is the same thing. A peak and a trough. And so we can determine volume. So then what we can do is we can take another snapshot during the winter months, and we can apply that artificial intelligence to say, well, if the snow line is there, and it's there, and it's there, and we can take millions of data points, we can very accurately determine the volume of that snowpack, and then we can determine how much energy will be generated. So this is the artificial intelligence tool in action. So these are the different areas here on the left-hand side. So we can select one here, and you can see that represents a different area within BC. And then what we're doing is we're applying that 3D modeling to these different areas, and you can see the historical snow cover changes because we're using that data, and then we're predicting the actual snow cover for that area. So we can also use this for avalanche detection, ice sheet size detection in the Arctic. So AI can be used for good and can be used to reduce the amount of risk, because now we don't have to send people up into very high risk areas to measure this information. And now we can use this to predict how much renewable and sustainable energy we can create and generate here in our own province. So that is the information that I had on electric vehicles and how we can use artificial intelligence to accelerate our sustainable energy generation. Thank you very much.
So our next speaker is Laure. She has done work in Europe before and is the founder of Free Think Together. She will explain us more what it's all about, and she's one of the co-captains, along with Erzsi and myself, of the Vancouver Climate Hub. So please give her a warm welcome. Thank you very much, Laure.
Hello, everybody. So, as Fernando just said, my name is Laure. As you can heard, I have a French accent. I am from France, so pardon me if I make some mistake, and I will try to do my best to be, understandable. So tonight I will introduce to you a policy brief writing by Smart Property Institute, which is a Canadian organization, a national research network, and policy think tank based at University of Ottawa. So just to tell you a little bit more about myself, my name is Laure Dupuy. I am a member of the Vancouver Climate Hub and the founder of Free Think Together. I offer to support organizations in implementation, managing sustainable development projects. So today I will speak about circular economy. I want to explain what is the circular economy, how we can integrate circular economy into clean growth, and how the government can accelerate the transition toward circular economy. I will begin by some data, but we heard a lot about data, but I think it's important to just speak about the context. So today, the world population is set to grow by 20% from today's level to reach 9.7 billion of persons by 2050, plus 3 billion from low to middle class over this period. Is set to use 71% more resources per capita. So without urgent steps to increase resource efficiency, the total demand for limited resources stock would reach 130 billion tons by 2050, which is huge. So this you can see on this schema the situation if we stay under a business as usual scenario. The global temperature by 2100 will be more than 4 degrees Celsius, pre-industrial levels. So current national commitment achieve about half of the requirements on terms of emission cuts, and circular economy could fill about half of the remaining gap. So now, what is the circular economy? So circular economy is an approach to maximize the value and eliminate waste by improving how goods and services are designed, manufactured and used. It gives a comprehensive framework thinking how material and how energy would flow in the sustainable and low carbon economy. So circular economy is related to a lot of other concepts like blue economy, industrial economy, cradle to cradle, biomimicry, and it's really a new way to think how we can add value and during all the different steps of design, produce, distribute, consume, reuse, and recycle, merge. Accenture strategy model give 5 subcategories about circular economy, which is we can like design a circular supply chains. We can work on recovery and recycling part. We can extend the product life of our product. We can like create sharing platform, and we can like transform the product and rethink the product as a solution services. So Canadian discussion on the circular economy has been overshadowed by the national emphasis on clean growth. Clean growth is the dominant template for Canadian Sustainable Economy Initiative, formalized in 2016 by the Pan-Canadian Framework on Climate Change and Clean Growth. So circular economy and clean growth are not totally different. There are a lot of common focus. They want to work on the low carbon economy, and they want to go further on economic growth by innovation and new technologies. So a study led by the Club of Rome show that the material efficiency element of the circular economy is one of the 3 key strategy points to decouple emission from growth with energy efficiency, as we saw, and renewable energy. It can add 3 to 10% in carbon emission cut. So circular economy is great because it's also allowed to create some job with all the material efficiency focus. So basically, circular economy strategy can reinforce clean growth goal of meeting climate change commitment. So I will speak now about the Canadian initiative and partnership around circular economy. So the Natural Step has launched Canada Circular Economy Lab in 2016, and they are working now on the fast focus on the development of a national circular economy strategy for Canada. The National Zero Waste Council, founded in 2013, is highly engaged to resolve the management waste solution, the prevention part, but also they are highly engaged in promoting a circular economy in Canada. And finally, the Conference Board of Canada published Business, Transformation and Circular Economy in 2017. So also I would like to share with you some initiative, like company already engaged on some projects. For example, IKEA Canada is actually working with my pronunciation will be hard for this one, Satsune Indigenous Fashion Incubator. It's a Toronto-based social enterprise to create a hand-made limited edition collection called Aterstala, made wholly from saved IKEA textiles that's been upcycled. Also, Unilever's 2010 plan, Sustainable Living Plan, is a global blueprint with 2 main goals: to help more than 1 billion people improve their health and well-being by 2020, and also to have the environmental footprint of its products across the value chain by 2030. Under this great plan, Unilever is accelerating its effort toward circular economy in waste and packaging. So their total footprint per customer has reduced by 28% since 2010, and reduced plastic component of bottle by up to 15%. with an overall commitment to design fully reusable, recyclable and compostable plastic packaging by 2025. Finally, Celestica, which is a Canadian multinational electrics manufacturing services company, has been named 2 times to the Global 100 Most Sustainable Corporation in the world. 4 years running as of Canadian Best 50 corporate citizen, and Celestica is one of the top overall sustainability performer in its sector, including 90% waste diversion rate in 2016. So now I want to introduce some Canadian government strategy and programs. So first of all, the Canadian Council for Ministers of the Environment released a Canadian-wide federal, provincial and territorial action plan for EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, in 2009. The second point, it's the 2017 strategy for a waste-free Ontario, because it's the Canadians' first provincial circular economy strategy. Finally, and which it's very important to remember because we are in Vancouver, the City of Vancouver has 2020 goals to reduce solid waste going to landfill by 50% from 2008, with the textile waste being on focus attention. Yeah, in this context, a study led by Vancouver Economic Commission and 7 Vancouver businesses came together in 2015 to help to define what is the barrier and the challenge for the textile industry sector. Okay. And local policies needs for stimulating the shift to a circular economy in the city's fashion and textile sector. Some of the recommendations that emerge is implementing an EPR responsibility, implementing a waste disposal ban, encouraging research and development for recycling, managing, facilitating collection program. So now I will share with you some barriers and challenges more globally about the circular economy expansion in Canada. The design, for example, practice such as programmed obsolescence, absence of end-of-life feedback loops for producers in many sectors, reliability of material, volatility market for recycled material, and increased probability of cross-contamination, for example, leading to damaged products. There are many others as end market, supply chain coordination, lack of standard, need for policy coordination between markets, lack of awareness and compliance, and lack of data and measurement. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that circular economy is a concept that it can be a really emerging and great solution here to be complementary to the clean growth. But we need to accelerate the process, and for that, the study analyzed 6 important tools to implement, which is the Extended Producer Responsibility Program and policies, encourage the green procurement, public investment in circular economy, working with cities as innovation hubs, partnerships and collaborative initiatives with business and civil society, And finally, national and regional roadmap for sector-based transition. So thank you really much for your listening. If you have some questions, I think I am the last speaker. So I don't know if I will just go back to my place, but you can come and see me if you have some questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and if we can get another round of applause for our amazing speakers. Now, Erzsi has had the hopes that everyone in the audience was more into high-tech question asking compared to me, but apparently you're my people and you don't know how to click on the link and ask a question like myself. I never do it, don't worry, they put the links. I like raising my hand and talking. I think it's part of the nice part of asking a question is being able to see the person, look them in the eyes rather than typing into a machine. So our nice attempt into going into the 21st century has failed. But if you have any questions, you can still ask them. So if you just want to raise your hand or stand up and just ask the question, I'll bring the mic to you and you can just direct it to whatever speaker you want. If not, we can start the viewing as soon as all questions are answered. Does anybody have a question? No brave souls in the audience? Any of the panelists, yeah. Questions for any of the panelists. No questions on tech, on what the Vancouver Climate Hub is going to do, on how to join. Hopefully all of you join us in the future. No questions? Okay, I guess no questions. We did have one question online, didn't we? Okay, so for those who want to send an email to their MP asking to sign the pledge on environmental rights, please sign up on the tables outside. So here to the right, there's where you can sign your name, your email, and they will send an email as if they will write an email down and say, and it shows as if you had sent it. So you don't have to do any work. So you just put your zip code, they will find who your MP is, and they will send an email on your behalf saying, I want you to sign the environmental rights petition. And that's it. Did our recording not go that well? So we had recorded it, but then it paused. We had some problems.
So I'll play you guys a song that we're going to do for school in North Vancouver on Friday. I'll be going with the David Suzuki Speaks program. We're going to go to Handsworth School. We're working with the grade 11s and their environmental class. So it'll be a class of about 50 people. We'll talk about plastic pollution and fast fashion waste, and this is one of the songs that we will end with. We published it about 6 months ago, and it's called We Are the Earth. We have a French version, and the chorus goes, what's the good news? What can you do? What's the good news? What can you do? Feel free to sing along. What can you do? What's the good news?
protect our land.
All right, and I'll play you a new song. It's called TikTok. So let me just warm up the hands. It's cold in here. My fingers are cold. Okay, it's a brand new song. What's the background? Well, yeah, you should know. It's about how much time we've got.
They've taken my heart and the earth to unknown places to rebuild and repair, protect and preserve. But healing takes time. Nature is better left untouched. It's a system with parts that cannot be replaced. Ooh. Breaking things is easy. Healing them takes more time. Breaking things is easy. Healing them takes more time. Working hard for the truth. So much deception. The sun rises and sets. There are truths we regret. Life to protect all around us. Breaking things is easy. Healing them takes more time. TikTok, breaking things is easy. Healing them takes more time. TikTok, breaking things is easy. Healing them takes more time. TikTok, breaking things is easy. Healing them takes more time.